Happy Sunday, and welcome to another Pride episode of Southern Gospel Sissy. I'm Justin Ryan. What do you do when the same church that taught you to sing decides you don't belong in the choir anymore? And what do you do when the songs you wrote are still being sung, but your name is no longer welcome in the room? This is the story of Marsha Stevens-Pino, a woman who helped shape Christian music and then lost everything for telling the truth.
There are some people whose stories are bigger than their biographies. People whose lives become testimony, not because life was easy, not because every prayer was answered the way they hoped, but because they kept showing up after every reason to quit. This is the story of Marsha Stevens-Pino, a woman who helped shape modern Christian music, a woman who lost nearly everything, and somehow kept singing anyway. She wasn't trying to start a movement. She was simply writing songs. Songs that sounded honest. Songs that sounded like conversations with God instead of performances for an audience. One of those songs was called "For Those Tears I Died." And somehow that song found its way into churches all across America. Youth groups sang it. Choirs sang it. Camp meetings sang it. Millions of Christians knew the song. Most never knew the woman who wrote it. For a brief moment, it seemed like Marsha had found her place. But movements don't always know what to do with the people who create them. Eventually, Marsha told the truth about who she was. She came out. And suddenly, the movement that had embraced her music no longer knew what to do with its songwriter. She lost her church. She lost her career. She lost custody of her children. The same faith community that had celebrated her gifts now questioned her place among them. One of the most painful stories from that season is almost impossible to imagine. Marsha was asked to remove a sign from her front door, a sign that simply said, "Jesus is Lord." As though Jesus belonged to someone else, as though faith could be repossessed, as though grace came with conditions. The psalmist once wrote, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." There are verses that sound beautiful in church, and there are verses that become lifelines. For Marsha, this was a lifeline. At the exact moment the church was closing its doors, something else was opening. In 1968, a Pentecostal preacher named Troy Perry gathered 12 people in his living room in Los Angeles. Most of them had been rejected by churches. Many had been told they had to choose between their faith and who they were. Troy believed that was a false choice. He believed God's love was bigger than human fear. That gathering became Metropolitan Community Church, MCC, a movement that would eventually span the globe. A church created for people who had been spiritually displaced. A church where LGBTQ Christians could worship openly, serve openly, love openly, and discover that God had never abandoned them. One Sunday, Marsha walked into an MCC service. No spotlight, no introduction. Just a woman trying to survive church again. And from the front of the room, Troy Perry recognized her. Not as a controversy, not as a scandal, not as a problem to be solved, as a child of God. He called her forward, asked her to sing, and after she did, he told her, "You were brought into the kingdom for such a time as this." Those words changed everything, not because they erased her pain, not because they restored everything she had lost, but because they reminded her that her story wasn't over.
I remember in 1984 looking up in a church service, one of our churches, the Metropolitan Community Church in Orange County, and seeing who I thought was Marsha Stevens coming into our church. My first reaction was, that can't be her. What would she be doing here? And then I saw also the person who was with her, and I knew immediately they were a couple. After the service, I went up to Marsha, and I told her, "Marsha, you've got to sing for me. I want you to." She said, "Oh, I don't do that anymore." I said, "Marsha," I said, "listen to me." I said, "There's a wonderful story in the Bible about a queen who had to save her people when she didn't expect it to happen. But it's a wonderful story." And after that, she started calling me Uncle Mordecai, after the uncle of Queen Esther.
The book of Esther asks a question that echoes through history. What if you were brought here for such a time as this? For Marsha, the answer would unfold over the next several decades. In those early MCC years, she found mentors, women whose names deserve to be remembered, women who helped shape an entire generation of LGBTQ Christian leaders, Reverend Jerry Ann Harvey, Reverend Elder Freda Smith, women who understood that ministry was never about power. It was about people. They taught by example. They preached with conviction. They loved without reservation. And they showed Marsha that evangelism wasn't about growing institutions. It was about helping people discover they were loved by God. From that point forward, Marsha's ministry took on a new shape. She began traveling with Heartsong, a gay Southern gospel group that carried traditional gospel music into spaces where people desperately needed to hear it. Think about that for a moment. A group of LGBTQ Christians singing Southern gospel music, the very music many had grown up loving, the very music some churches insisted no longer belonged to them. And yet, they sang it anyway, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with joy, with conviction, with hope. Their travels eventually took them to the March on Washington. There, amid calls for justice and equality, they sang songs of faith. For many people in attendance, it was the first time they had heard someone say they could be both queer and Christian, that they did not have to choose, that God had not abandoned them. The prophet Zephaniah once wrote, "I will gather the outcast. I will give them praise and honor in every place where they have been put to shame." That promise feels almost written for moments like these. A gathering of the outcast, a reclaiming of dignity, a restoration of what had been taken away. But perhaps the most important ministry Marsha ever performed wasn't on a stage. It happened quietly, away from applause, away from microphones, away from recognition. Because Marsha wasn't only a singer, she was also a nurse, an RN. And during the height of the AIDS crisis, that mattered. The men she traveled with, the friends she loved, the people she sang beside, began getting sick, one after another. At a time when fear often spoke louder than compassion, Marsha moved closer. While some churches debated whether people with AIDS deserved care, Marsha cared for them. She sat beside hospital beds. She helped manage medications. She offered comfort when families could not. She stood beside people who society often preferred to forget. Jesus once said, "I was sick and you took care of me." It's easy to read those words. It's much harder to live them. Marsha lived them. And through it all, she kept writing. She kept singing. She kept listening.
Marsha has been in my life for 30 years. She's one of the most intelligent songwriters I've ever written with. I've written with some good ones, and a lot of them. She has an incredible way and gift with words. I had to have a knee replacement surgery in October of 2015 that became infected 7 months later. I had to be hospitalized, have the hardware removed, and a PICC line put in. And I was terrified, to say the least, because I was in a pretty serious condition. I expressed my fears to Marsha, and as you know, not only is she an incredible songwriter, but she's an incredible nurse. She lived in Brentwood at the time. I lived in Mount Juliet, which is about 40 miles approximately each way. And for 2 months, Marsha came to my house, cleaned my PICC line, and gave me my antibiotics because she knew I was a scaredy cat and terrified. But that speaks to who she is, and she wouldn't take anything for it. So I asked her what she needed, and she said she needed a watch. And we laughed about Cindy saying, "What kind of nurse doesn't have a watch with a second hand?" So that's what I got her. But more important than the watch was what I had inscribed on the back of it, which was, "You've always been Jesus to me." And Marsha has indeed been Jesus to me.
One of her most beautiful songs is called "Sing to Me." And the older I get, the more I think that song explains her life better than any biography ever could. In it, she writes, I stand and look into their eyes and know I can't make one heart hear. What remarkable wisdom. She understood something many of us spend our entire lives trying to learn. You can't force transformation. You can't force faith. You can't force people to hear God. What you can do is listen. What you can do is love. What you can do is keep singing.
It's Jason
And DeMarco.
and we just wanted to share how much we love you and appreciate you and just are so grateful for the path that you forged for so many of us.
And all your years of service and your heart that you put in your years of service.
Yes, I'll never forget the first MCC conference I did in Los Angeles, and I met you, and it was just amazing because I was meeting Marsha Stevens, and it's been such a fun journey to walk this path with you and to be a light for this community. And you're the mother of all of it, and so you showed us the way.
And somewhere in all that listening, all that loving, all that singing, Balm Ministries was born. A ministry dedicated to helping LGBTQ Christians tell their stories, share their gifts, find their voices. And 40 years later, that work continues. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Years later, Marsha became the first recipient of the Purple Grass Award for Excellence in Evangelism, an award named in honor of Reverend Elder Frida Smith and her famous sermon. It was a fitting tribute. The woman who had once been pushed out of the church was now being honored for carrying the gospel farther than anyone could have imagined. And perhaps the most memorable description ever written about Marsha came from the Christian Century. They wrote, "Stevens became conservative Christianity's worst nightmare, a Jesus-loving, Bible-believing, God-fearing lesbian Christian." I've always loved that quote because it reveals something important. The nightmare was never Marsha. The nightmare was the realization that God's love could not be controlled, that grace refuses to stay inside the boundaries we build, that faith sometimes survives the very institutions that tried to destroy it. And maybe that's the lesson of Marsha Stevens-Pino's life. Not that she never suffered, not that she never lost, not that she never grieved, but that she never stopped listening for the voice of God. And once she heard that voice, she spent the rest of her life helping others hear it too. God is still singing. And because Marsha Stevens-Pino kept singing along, a whole lot of us finally learned the song.
Into their eyes and know I can't make one heart hear the whisper of your gentle voice, the constant murmur in my ear, like the roar of a lion rumbles warning to the wild, like the whisper of a parent tucking in a child. Sing to me, oh, sing to me until I learn your song, a melody, a harmony. Teach me to sing along till hearts of stone are broken wide, and I can lead them to your side. The sheep for whom the shepherd died, won't you sing to me? Enlarge, inflame, and fill my heart. Teach me to love them like you do, and let your voice inside my soul ring out to lead the lost to you, like the cry of battle trumpets ringing down the city walls, like the whippoorwill's sweet music as twilight falls. Sing to me, oh, sing to me until I learn your song, a melody, a harmony. you sing along till hearts of stone are broken wide, and I can lead them to your side. The sheep for whom the shepherd died. Won't you sing to me? Oh, sing to me. A melody, a harmony, till hearts of stone are broken wide, and I can lead them to your side. The sheep for whom the shepherd died. Won't you sing to me? Sing to